What's going on, pursuers? Welcome to The Pursuit of Calling, the podcast that provides you with the strategies and tools needed to successfully discover and pursue your calling. Whether it's through inspiring stories, thought-provoking interviews, or quick, insightful episodes on personal growth and development, we've got you covered. I'm your host, Thomas Carney. Enjoy the episode. Welcome back, everyone, to the Pursuit of Calling podcast. I know you already heard that in the intro, but I'm Thomas Carney. And today I want to talk to you about something that is absolutely foundational to growth, purpose, leadership, and becoming who God has called you to be. And that is the law of awareness. This is the second chapter in the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth by John Maxwell. If you haven't picked that book up yet, I'm going to keep putting that link to the Amazon link in the description of this podcast so you can go grab your own copy. And this is also one of the topics that we'll be discussing in this week's Pursuer Circle. It's a once a week personal development group all about how to grow with intentionality and accountability. Keep your eye out for me sharing out links for the next one on Instagram and social media on Facebook so that you can be aware of when the next one's starting so you can join on week 1. But here's the truth. You cannot change what you refuse to honestly see. A lot of people say they want growth. A lot of people say they want purpose. A lot of people say they want a different life than they have, but very few people are willing to slow down long enough to become deeply aware of where they actually are. And awareness is uncomfortable because awareness removes excuses. It forces us to confront things we've normalized in our lives, patterns we've tolerated, habits we've justified, and sometimes even dreams we've abandoned because they seemed impossible because of our current circumstances. But awareness is also one of the greatest gifts God gives us because awareness creates opportunity for transformation. One of the biggest lies people believe is that growth naturally happens over time. But growth is not automatic, guys. Just because you're getting older does not mean you're growing. At least not growing well. Just because you're busy does not mean you're progressing. And just because you have potential does not mean you're progressing and growing in it. Growth has to be intentional. And intentional growth begins with awareness. You have to honestly ask yourself, do I actually like the direction my life is moving? Am I becoming the person I want to become? Am I living intentionally or am I drifting? Because drift is subtle. Most people don't wake up one day and intentionally decide to live disconnected from their purpose. They drift there. One compromise at a time. One distraction at a time, one delay at a time. And eventually they wake up feeling disconnected from who they once believed they could be. One of the strongest ideas from this law is most people are comfortable with old problems than they are with new solutions. That's powerful. Because familiarity often feels safer than growth. Even painful patterns can become comfortable when they're familiar. Some people stay in cycles they hate simply because uncertainty feels more uncomfortable than dysfunction. And this is where awareness matters. Awareness asks questions like, why am I staying here? Why do I keep repeating these cycles? Why do I keep delaying what I know I need to do? Not from shame, but from honesty. Because honesty creates movement. A lot of the time, we think the issue is external. We think if I had more time, if I had more money, if I had more support, if my circumstances changed, for me, if I wasn't in physical pain every single day. But awareness often reveals that the biggest obstacle isn't external. It's internal. Sometimes the real issue is fear. Sometimes it's insecurity. Sometimes it's perfectionism. Sometimes it's the lack of discipline. And sometimes it's waiting for certainty before taking action. One thing I've realized in my own life is this. You don't grow into opportunity accidentally. You grow into opportunity intentionally. Preparation matters. Awareness matters. Consistency matters. One of the biggest traps people fall into is waiting. Waiting for the perfect time. Waiting for confidence. Waiting for clarity. Waiting until they feel fully prepared. But if you study growth, leadership, business, ministry, or purpose-driven people, you'll notice something. Most of them started before they felt ready, because growth rarely happens in comfort. Everything worthwhile is uphill. That's why I left my job to pursue what I believe God is calling me to do. Not to pat myself on the back, but this is what I'm talking about, guys. And the longer you delay action, the easier it becomes to stay stuck. That's why getting started matters so much. Even imperfect action creates momentum. One thing I've learned personally is the importance of reflection. Not just reacting emotionally to life, not just staying busy, but intentionally slowing down long enough to ask questions like, what am I learning? What patterns keep showing up? What is working? What's not working? What is God trying to reveal to me right now? Because if you never reflect, you'll repeat cycles without even realizing it. And that's a tragedy. Awareness grows through reflection. That's one reason journaling, prayer, conversations, coaching, accountability, and honest self-evaluation, that's why those things are so valuable. They help reveal blind spots. Another major part of awareness is proximity to others. Who are you learning from? Who are you surrounding yourself with? Who is already living the kind of life you want to build? And think like maybe there's people out there that you can't get to. Maybe they're authors of books that you can go ahead and read. Because awareness grows when you get around people who stretch your thinking. Sometimes you don't realize what's possible until you see someone else living it. And this is important. Not for comparison, for perspective. There's a difference. Comparison produces insecurity. Perspective produces possibility. One of the most important awareness questions we can ask ourselves is, am I willing to pay the price for the life I say I want? Because growth always costs something. It costs time. It costs comfort, consistency, it costs discipline, sacrifice, humility. Everybody wants everybody wants the outcome, but not everybody wants to go through the process. But purpose is built through the process. And the people who consistently grow are usually not the most talented people. They're the most intentional. I think awareness is deeply connected to Scripture. Throughout the Bible, we constantly see moments where God reveals truth to people before transformation happens. Awareness precedes change. David prayed, "Search me, God, and know my heart." That's awareness. The prodigal son came to himself before he returned home. That's awareness. Peter became aware of his weaknesses before becoming the leader God called him to be. Awareness is not condemnation. Awareness is invitation. God reveals things because he wants to transform them. So I want to leave you with a few questions today. What in your life have you become comfortable with tolerating? You can write this down. I'm going to repeat that one. What in your life have you become comfortable tolerating? What habits need to stop? In other words, next question is, where are you drifting your life instead of growing intentionally? Where are you living on default? What truth about yourself have you been avoiding? What truth about yourself have you been avoiding? What cycles do you consistently go through that are keeping you stuck where you are? What truth have you been avoiding? Maybe there's a truth, that positive truth of, I was called to pursue this particular line of work. I was called to pursue this opportunity. I feel like that is a truth of my life, and I've been avoiding this truth. The next to last question is, what step do you already know that you need to take? What is that next step that's already on your mind that you've been thinking about, but you've been procrastinating and putting it off? Maybe the most important question: what would change if you became fully honest with yourself? What would change if you became fully aware, took the time to slow down and become fully aware of where you are and what you need to do in order to get to where you want to be? What would change? Awareness is not the end of growth. It's the beginning. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Pursuit of Calling podcast. If this episode encouraged you, challenged you, or helped you in some way, share it with someone who needs it. And remember, you can move from pain to purpose by pursuing your calling. So pursue it well, pursue it with excellence. And guys, I'll see you next week. Peace.